Ducati has finally spoken out and revealed what was really behind Marc Marquez's struggles at Silverstone. The reigning champion, who is usually so dominant, instead endured a troubled weekend and a result that fell far short of expectations. So what actually happened to Marquez at Silverstone that forced Ducati to speak up? Was there a major problem that had been hidden from the public all along? Let's discuss. Ducati has gained an important clue about the cause of Marquez's drop in performance. One of the biggest issues was related to the performance of the Michelin rear tyre, which deteriorated throughout the race. Marquez had already felt signs of trouble during the sprint race. According to his own admission, the rear tyre's performance began to drop as early as the third lap. At the beginning of the race, Marquez was still trying to stay with the leading group. However, once he realised that the tyre's performance was continuing to decline, his strategy changed. He stopped pushing himself to attack the riders ahead of him. Instead, his focus shifted toward defending his position and making sure his bike could reach the finish line. The situation was so difficult that Marquez even described his race as a survival race. In other words, the problem was not simply about losing a little grip. Once the rear tyre lost performance too quickly, it became extremely difficult to extract the full potential of the Ducati. Ducati course general manager Gigi Dall'Igna provided a clue about a possible factor behind the issue. For the British Grand Prix, Michelin brought a soft rear tyre with a stiffer casing compared with the soft specification used at several previous rounds. The change had actually been planned well in advance. Silverstone had been moved on the calendar from late May to early August. That shift meant the track conditions and temperatures were also different. The stiffer casing was designed to help the tyre cope with changes in shape and increased temperatures while operating. However, that construction also made the tyre's operating window, or its ideal working temperature range, even more important. Every motorcycle has different characteristics when it comes to generating, maintaining, and shedding tyre temperature. Some bikes are capable of keeping the tyres within the optimal operating zone throughout a race. Others can cause the tyres to move outside that operating window much more quickly. When that happens, tyre performance can gradually decline. Traction is reduced, acceleration is no longer optimal, and the rider begins to lose the ability to maintain a consistent pace. That appears to have been one of the problems Marquez experienced at Silverstone. Marquez's struggles did not begin only in the main race. He had already found it difficult to maintain his pace during the sprint race. The Ducati rider could manage only 9th place after starting from 6th on the grid. Silverstone also has characteristics that are quite different from the circuits where Marquez has traditionally been strongest. The track is fast, long and flowing. Riders are required to maintain high speeds while also making aggressive changes of direction. Interestingly, Marquez himself admitted that this problem was not entirely new. According to him, what he experienced at Silverstone this season was similar to what he faced at the same circuit last year. The difference was that last year he was still able to make up time in other sectors and compensate for his weakness. Last year, I struggled at the same point as this year, but I was still able to make up time through the changes of direction or in other sections. This year, I couldn't, Marquez admitted in the source material. That statement shows that Marquez's fundamental weakness at Silverstone was already known. The problem now is that his ability to compensate for that weakness was simply not at the same level this time around. One of the factors mentioned in the material is Marquez's physical condition. The shoulder injury he suffered is said to have affected his strength in certain sections of the track. For years, high-speed direction changes have been one of the areas Marquez could exploit to gain time. When that ability is reduced, Silverstone becomes even more difficult to conquer. The situation became even more interesting when Marquez tried to match the pace of his younger brother, Alex Marquez. Alex was able to find better speed through several sections of the track. Marc then tried to study and adapt to his brother's riding style. However, the result was not what he expected. Marquez felt that he was losing even more time when he tried to force his riding style to match Alex's. This shows that in MotoGP, following another rider is not always the solution. Every rider has a different braking style, a different way of carrying speed through corners, and a different way of utilizing their bike. Marquez understands this well. He has emphasised that since 2013, there have been certain circuits where he has always been stronger or weaker. Fast, flowing corners are one of the areas where he has traditionally struggled. Before the sprint race and the main race, Marquez also finished only 6th in the free practice session. At first glance, that result could be seen as a sign that Ducati did not have the best pace at Silverstone. However, Marquez's crew chief, Marco Rigamonti, saw a different approach from the reigning world champion. Marquez did not appear to be pushing himself to chase the fastest lap with maximum aggression. That approach was considered more measured because Silverstone is not just about one lap speed. Riders must be able to maintain their pace as the tyres come under increasing stress and their bodies begin to tire. Therefore, finishing 6th in practice did not necessarily mean that Marquez had lost his speed. He may have been gradually building his race package by understanding the bike's behaviour, tyre conditions, race pace, and his own physical ability to handle the demands of Silverstone. For a rider fighting for the World Championship, avoiding unnecessary risks can be just as important as securing a higher position in practice. The difficulties at Silverstone forced Marquez to change his approach. If winning had previously been the main target every race weekend, Silverstone became a track where securing points was far more important. Marquez was not even confident enough to set a podium target. In his assessment, Ducati was still behind Aprilia in terms of outright pace at Silverstone. That is why a more realistic target was considered to be a top 5 finish. On the surface, that goal might seem modest for a world champion. But in the context of a championship battle, finishing inside the top 5 at a track that does not suit a rider's strengths can be extremely valuable. Not every race has to be won. In a long championship season, a rider must also know when it is time to attack and when it is time to protect their points. Silverstone became a real test of Marquez's maturity as a rider fighting for the world title. Although Silverstone exposed some of Marquez's weaknesses, his championship hopes should not be considered over. Dani Pedrosa even issued a warning to Marquez's rivals. According to Pedrosa, Marquez has certain advantages that other riders simply do not possess. Pedrosa highlighted several circuits in the second half of the season, particularly tracks with many left-hand corners. 3 circuits he mentioned were Aragon, Phillip Island, and Valencia. That kind of layout suits one of Marquez's greatest strengths extremely well. Silverstone may have been a tough test for Marc Marquez, but his opportunity to bounce back is still wide open. Will Marquez strike back at Aragon and once again show his dominance? Let us know what you think in the comments below.